What's up, Wizards? It's Dev from the MTG, back with you with another deck tech. Well, I'm supposed to come with Jund today, but I've got Jund locked and loaded, ready to go. Totally there for you with the Jundness. But I had a couple of people ask that I do green-white bolster in the comments of the last deck tech that we made. And, you know, one guy was like, let's do green-white bolster. And another guy was like, I would totally like that. So that's what we're doing today. I decided to do green-white bolster, throw this thing together, and while I'm at it, make it budget, because you can do this for about 20 bucks and still get to play with some really good cards, it turns out. So let's jump right into it. Well, you're going to play 6 1-drops in this deck, and when I tell you about the first two, you're going to be like, that's not bolster, but you need them. The first two things you're going to play 2 copies of Elvish Mystic. You don't want to play too many because it's not a good top deck. I mean, that's why we see a lot of 2 of Elvish Mystics right now. And if you get in your opening hand or in the first few turns, it's a fantastic card. And you don't necessarily need that ramp on the first turn or two, but later on in the game, 3rd, 4th turn, it really helps if you can play some of your high dollar cards a turn early. So we are playing Elvish Mystic. The other 4 1-drops we're playing are 4 copies of Servant of the Scale. I really like this guy. In testing, he's been as good as I would hope that he would be. This is a replacement effect, obviously, and those are usually pretty good. He keeps his PT on the board when he dies. That can be extremely relevant, too. And he goes well with quite a few of the other things in the deck. So 4 copies of Servant, and that's going to serve you well, I think. So far, he's been much better in testing even than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be really good. But the fact this guy can leave behind more than just the 1 power is really good. It's much better than you might think it is. We're going to play 4 copies of Avatar the Resolute. You can get them for about $2 on TCG Player right now, which I say do that because I'm not of much into speculation, but this guy's worth more than a couple of bucks, I think. I don't think he's going to be like just this horrible card or anything. He's not a 50-cent card or anything. This card, he's quite good, and he's the card that I want in testing to play. I want to, not even second turn, I want to rip this guy up on like the 12th turn as a top deck because he's always good, he's always relevant, and later on in the game he just gets better, honestly, because what this deck does is you want to stall out early board states with creatures that have large counters, a lot of counters on them and things like that. You want to stall out the board state as much as possible because you've got a lot of ways of breaking stalemates with the +1/+1 counters and the blah blah blah. And Avatar is one of those because if you drop him late in the game, he can get very big on enters the battlefield. So Avatar is quite good and he's worth the $2 off TCG Player. So go get Avatar for Go get Avatar the Resolute. We're also going to play, and this is where I think that I'm going to get some dissension, honestly, but we kind of have to play this card. It is thematically one of the best cards we could play in the deck. So we're playing 3 copies of Anafenza Kentree Spirit. Now, when you're building decks, philosophy dictates, or theory dictates, that you don't want 4 copies of a 2-drop at 2 of the same mana, alright, and then 3 copies of another 2-drop at 2 of a different mana. So I've got, 4 at 2 green and then 3 at 2 white. Now, obviously that wouldn't normally be suggested, but we're only playing 2 colors. It's a budget build. We will be able to get those lands. So far in playtesting, I have had a problem playing Anafenza once, and I've played about 7 games. So it's not horrible or anything, but I do want to point out that there is a bit of design problem there. But Avatar and Anafenza are the 2 best 2-drops that you could play in this deck. Hands down. No doubt about it. I looked at other stuff. I especially looked at Lightwalker, but ended up just going with these 2 cards because even though the mana is a bit of an issue there in the early game, it's totes worth it, especially if you can drop Anafenza on the 2nd turn. She's crazy on the 2nd turn. Everything you do from then on out will be that much better if you just drop her. So you gotta play these 2 cards. They work very well in conjunction with one another too. The other 2 cards we're playing in the 2-drop slot, you may be wondering, are 2 copies of Hidden Dragon Slayer. This is super good as a bolster target. First of all, the lifelink is very relevant, kills siege rhinos and other stuff that's way over your head when it comes to this deck. And Hidden Dragon Slayer does all the work for you. There's another copy of it in the sideboard because every time you play it, he's good. If they don't remove him on morphs, he's fan-freaking-tastic. Play Hidden Dragon Slayer. He's better than you think. I don't think he's like a super standard card or anything, but Hidden Dragon Slayer does like so much work. And, like I said, crazy bolster target. So we're playing that guy. And all the money is in the 2-drops. Again, a rare in the 2-drop slot. And we're playing 2 copies of Abzan Falconer. Abzan Falconer is crazy. Like, I actually probably should be playing more copies of this guy, but I want to do other stupid things. So, yeah, doing a budget green-white bolster deck is an opportunity to do a lot of fun things that I wanted to get in there. And one of them is Abzan Falconer. This guy busts stalemates wide open. When you drop him, he's pretty darn good right there. Like, before you even put counters on him, before he, loses summoning sickness, he's already crazy. He'll sometimes win you the game without having to do anything other than just drop him late in the game. This is a good card. For something like this, Abzan Falconer is very good. So, and once you're in that stalemate, he just becomes crazy. Speaking of breaking stalemates, we got 1 copy of Tuskguard. A lot of these aggro strategies in the format currently hate trample. And so this card can be pretty darn good for you. Like I said, I'm thinking about just making it another Abzan Falconer. But he does his job, and that's all we need him to do in this $20 deck. We're running 3 copies of Sandcrafter Mage. Now, at common, this is a more than good card. If you got nothing else when it comes into play, it's a 3 mana, 3/3, which is fine stats. But getting to choose the bolster is actually super good. Now, usually, he kind of ends up being either your next bolster target or a chump blocker, but just getting that extra point of PT onto something and getting bonuses for having counters, blah, 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 is very good if you have an Enduring Scale Lord out, which we'll talk about in just a second. Then, 2 counters. There's a lot of stuff that you can actually do with this one little counter, and creatures like this actually make this deck run much more smoothly. So we are going to play 3 copies of Sandcrafter, play a nice sort of premium little 3-drop common. Here's another one of. We're talking about 4 drops here. We've got 1 copy of High Sentinels of Arishin. I love this card. I've always loved this card. I think that it should be more of a thing than it is. It's kind of dumb, but it's not. But I've always been a big fan, and it does the things in this deck that you want it to do. We've got 3 copies of Dragon Scale General. Now, this guy is dumb. This guy, we talked about him in the set review when we talked about Fate Reforged. Like, I don't think this guy's a thing, but I think he's good in Commander, and, the usual shtick. But this guy's crazy in this deck. If you can just, have him out for that 1 turn, get to the end of that turn, bolster, so much. It's just absolutely ridiculous when, again, you're in that stalemate position. The deck really wants to get to a position where the board is stalled so it can do things like High Sentinels and Abzan Falconer and Tuskguard Champion and this. Because being able to bolster X every turn for, once you hit the 2nd, 3rd turn, it just becomes this insurmountable thing. Like, if it happens every single turn, there will come a time where your opponent just can't do anything about that if they let it remain on the board. Moving to a 5-drop, we've got 3 copies. It started off as 2, but I'm going 3 copies of Dromoka the Eternal. Obviously, this is a crazy bolster thing. Bolster 2 when you swing in, bolster any, bolster 2. And 5 mana, big flyer that also bolsters for you. And right now, it's only like 60 cents on TCG Player. So go scoop up Dromoka the Eternal. He's stupid good in this deck. And even if, you're not reliant on bolster triggers with him, the bolster is kind of win more because you're swinging in with this huge dragon all the time. And even against, a lot of mid-range strategies, this is a fine card, especially against mid-range strategies. If they don't remove him, for whatever reason, if they can't remove him, then after just a couple of turns of him swinging, you've got 2 other, giant freaking guys, and they now have to end hostilities or Crux of Fate or whatever to deal with you, because this guy makes everyone else better, and I do recommend Dromoka. I wasn't sure about him at first. I knew he had to be in the deck, but as I played, I always wanted Dromoka. So 3 copies of Dromoka in this. And 1 6-drop to round it off. We've got 1 copy of Enduring Scale Lord. Started off as 2, but I made Dromoka 3, and now this is down to 1, because this is win more, honestly. It's just really fun, though, to get an Enduring Scale Lord out there and, attack with Dromoka, bolster 2, and then put 2 counters on this guy. Or, there's so many things that you can do in this deck with Enduring Scale Lord, but it's a 6-drop. I'm just not a huge fan, honestly. Like I said, we're trying to get to board stall situations. I've said it 30 times in this video. So, we're trying to get to board stall situations. That was the remote. Anyway, and once we get to those, Enduring Scale Lord is another thing that can just bust the game wide open for us. Because after a couple of turns of Scale Lord went out, we've got, a 12-12 flyer that's just And that's pretty good. So you might want to consider upping the copies of Scale Lord. I was a little iffy on it because he's such a huge investment. But again, just a threat. Like, it's a thing that if they don't remove it, it's gonna take the game over. And like almost every creature in the deck is like that. And a lot of decks, even some of the control style things that we see that can just wipe the board, it's hard to handle every creature being a threat, although it takes a few turns of investment. We're playing 7 spells in this deck, 29 creatures and 7 spells. So what are we going to do with our spell slots? Well, I'll say it one more time, and probably 20 more before the video's over. But we want to get to board stall. We want to stall the board out on the 3rd or 4th, 5th, 6th turn, and just, make it a situation where they have to remove our guys that consistently, constantly gain value, while their dudes sit there and are the same guys they played when they played them. So we're going to run 4 copies of Pacifism. In a budget deck, this is ideal. This is extraordinarily cheap removal that takes out literally everything except for Stormbreath Dragon, just anything that doesn't have pro-white, and it just is always good. Pacifism has always been good, and it will always continue to be good, and in a budget build like this, it's exactly the removal you're looking for. So, Pacifism, we're doing it, of course. We have one copy of Abzan Advantage. And you might be like, bah, but there's method to this. Obviously they don't have to sacrifice an enchantment. You still get the bolster 1 and its instant speed. So it functions as a thematic combat trick for this deck, and a fairly decent one sometimes too. This can catch people off guard when you least suspect it. We're playing 1 copy in the main of Inspiring Call. This is our Ajani's Presence type spell. It's more or less the same thing. We really have to survive board wipe because we don't want to do all that work for nothing. And Inspiring Call totally helps you do that. You don't even have to strive for it. You just, if you guys +1/+1 counter, he's indestructible. So, Inspiring Call is actually insane, honestly. Even if you only hit the one guy with, save one dude from removal or whatever, Inspiring Call is better than even, when I first read it, I looked at Gatherer for this deck, and I don't think I'd even paid attention to this card. So when I first read it, I was like, oh, well, this is what we're playing this card. But it gradually got filtered out and into the sideboard. But it does do a lot of work for you. When you play against control, you will be siding more of these in. Inspiring Call is very good. Finally, in our spell slots, we've got Gleam of Authority. Just 1 Gleam of Authority. Again, we're playing with Bolster here, and this is more of an experimental deck. Now, Gleam of Authority hasn't taken a game over by itself yet in testing, but it can. Just read this card. You're begging to get 2 for 1. That's why there's only 1 copy of Gleam in here. But if Gleam gets out of hand, I imagine that it gets incredibly, completely out of hand quickly. So we are still playing the 1 copy of Gleam. I've been thinking about maybe taking it out, but Gleam is such an interesting read, and it works so well thematically with what we're trying to do that I'm keeping it in for now, and it's probably super fun when it sticks. For our lands, remember this is a budget deck, so let's run through this real quick. We've got 4 copies of the green-white Gain land, which is right there on your screen. I always forget the name of these stupid things, but we call them Gain lands, the green-white one. You've got 10 forests and 10 plains. And some people are going to be like, but you gotta play one of the 2-drops! And it's like, this deck is budget, and I've hardly ever have a problem playing either of those 2-drops, honestly. So it's just not, I'm not going to say it's not something we're worried about, because, from a design, a deck building sort of theory argument, yeah, that's horrible. But if you wanted to make this deck far more expensive and you'll be able to play those 2-drops more consistently, you can add all those lands that you want to add. You can add your temples and your mana confluences and your filter lands and your fetch lands. Well, I hope we get filter lands in Zendikar, but your fetch lands, all that stuff. You may even, in this budget build, consider copies of Evolving Wilds, but we really kind of don't want tap lands in this thing because we're already a couple of turns behind everything else in the format. Well, that is it for now for Green-White Bolster. This is a budget deck, and I've been trying to kind of keep it under the main at least about $20. So there are some things in here that could obviously be better. Let's all face that fact right this second. But for, just 20 bucks, this is a pretty fun thing and could do pretty good work for you at an F&M or something. Once it gets rolling, it actually has a lot of cool little tricks up its sleeve, and a lot of the things it does, it can do instant speed. people are kind of scared of your ability to, during their combat step, put a +1/+1 counter on a guy. Or, bolster a dude at instant speed somehow. So the deck actually can psych people out until you get to that long game. That's the thing, is it's kind of a mind trick in a way, because people, 4th, 5th turn are like, well, he can put a token on that guy, he get counters on the dude right now. But the longer they wait, the better a chance you have of picking up the game. So it really puts them in this little window, if you can get it going, which is honestly the hardest part of this deck. I wouldn't say that this is the best deck ever, but for 20 bucks, you'll have all the fun at F&M with it. So go for it. I fully suggest building this because it's super cheap. You probably own 90% of these cards already, and it's really fun. If you like +1/+1 counters, this may be the thing in Standard for you. That's all for now, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, or just check out the description, because in the description we've got a bunch of other deck techs that we've done. We've got upcoming deck techs. We've got a series on how to evaluate cards. We've already done our first video on how to evaluate creatures. Next week's video, if you subscribe, you'll see it, or if you just come back to our channel, you'll see it, is how to evaluate the meta game. So, could be potentially super cool information for you, or you might want to watch it just so you can go in the comments and be like, you're wrong about this, this, and this, and this, which I fully welcome. You should do that. So, and on this video, comment. Let me know if I forgot something, or if you think that something is just strictly better in one way or another than the cards I've chosen, because I'm always interested in that. We're a community of deck builders, and we have to help each other out. So, I'm Dev from SBMTG. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all the things with your Facebook and your YouTubes and your Googles, and I'll see you kids later. Thanks for watching, Wizards.